Welcome to everyone that has come out here this morning. There's quite a number of seats yet that are empty, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Those of you who are timely, good job. That is one of the things I would like to talk about this morning. So this is a good example here. All right. Well, we want to welcome everyone that has come to this seminar. And we just want to give a huge shout out to the Shed Builder Magazine group and the others that have spent hours coordinating the logistics of this event. And so on behalf of Gaiman Accounting and the advising team, we also want to thank you for coming to this event. And we're also honored and deeply grateful that we can serve you in different capacities. So a bit of an introduction to myself. So this morning my talk is on building a sustainable workforce. And so a bit of introduction. I live in Chuckey, which is a small town about 65 miles north of here. And the bigger town right next to us would be Greenville, Tennessee. And so my introduction to the shed world began in the year of 95. In 1995, my dad, we moved off the dairy farm and we bought a small shed company in upstate New York. The name of that company was Solid Built Storage Sheds, and in a small town of Madison, New York. So that was my introduction to the shed world. So forwarding to 2003, I married and moved to Tennessee, and I thought I was finished with the shed industry. After having been in it for about 6 or 7 years, I thought I was through with that. 2.5 years later, I had the opportunity to buy an existing company. So in 2007, I had the opportunity to take ownership. I had been working there for about 1.5 years prior to that. So I was able to buy Cherokee Storage Buildings, which today has been sold and is now called Cherokee Structures. And so I was 26 years of age. I was a little over $1 million in debt. Probably had more guts than sense at that point. And so looking back over the last 15 years, I look at some of the lessons that I've learned, and I'm happy that I can share them with you here today. I sold the company in 2017, and because we had gone to Kenya, Africa as missionaries, and then when returning, I went to work for Gaiman Accounting in the business advising division. And so sheds run deep in my blood, and they are, I enjoy them. I enjoy to talk sheds, and I enjoy to work with businesses that are involved in the industry. So, as I reflected back over the years that I had employees, and we went from 5 employees to around 12 when I sold the company. 3 of those employees were with me the entire 10 years that I had the company. And as I reflect on some of that and some of the experiences that I learned, there are things I would do differently today, and they may or not have remained with me for 10 years just because of some things I've learned since then. So as I look at you all that are sitting here, obviously you're also thinking about how do we build a sustainable workforce? Because as we look over the last 3 years of hiring, it has become very, very difficult to hire or even to retain employees. And so I think it's a good thing for us to think about. How do we retain our workforce? So the question comes, why would someone want to work for you? And so before I get further into this, there was papers that were handed out, and this is not a right or wrong answer that you can put down there, but we're just simply looking for some feedback from you. And towards the end of this slide presentation, we will actually show you the results that have come in through the QR code. It's all, no one knows who you are. It's all just consolidated results, and so you have no fear of putting down what you want to put down. And so the first question there on your company culture, it's not, just how would you see your company culture? So the rest of them are fairly self-explanatory. So back to my first point here. Why would someone want to work for your company? Have you ever stopped and asked yourself the question, why would someone want to work for me? When they have all of these other options where they could actually go work. Is it because of the wages that you pay them? Is that why they want to come work for you? Is it because of maybe location? It's easy to get to, and so therefore they come work for you. Or is it maybe the type of work that you offer? Is that the reason they come to work for you? Maybe it's because of the availability. Maybe you're the only employer in the area, and so therefore they come work for you instead of going and getting another job. Maybe it's a relationship that you offer, and therefore they come to work for you as well. And maybe it is because of flexibility, maybe because of schedule, and because of just they have flexibility in their schedule. Or maybe they have the option, as I do, to work remotely. I can work from home. The main office is in New Holland, Pennsylvania, and I can work remotely from home. And so therefore, it has a drawing factor for me. All right, as we think about retaining a sustainable workforce, there is 3 key points that we want to look at. And the first one is the company culture. Recently, over the last 10 years, I have become increasingly aware of the impact that company culture has on employees and just the company as a whole. So we want to talk a little bit about company culture. Then we also want to talk a little bit, what are some things that you can do to attract or to retain or to motivate employees? And then the third thing that we want to talk slightly about is compensation. Should it be percentage pay or should it be hourly pay? So those are some things that we would like to talk about here this morning. So as we think about, like I said, company culture is huge. It's a big, big deal. It has been said that profitability follows culture. Stop and think about that for a bit. Profitability follows culture. If you have a culture within your company that just really is not a good culture, your employees come unmotivated, there's absolutely no drawing factor for them. I believe that as we think about that statement, there is a lot of truth to that. There's a situation that I'm aware of that the employer really didn't care what the culture was in his company. And there was this lack of concern for his employees. And so there came a time when all employees literally left the company, and he was left alone. So I asked the question, think about it. Does company culture affect profitability? Absolutely. With a terrible culture, you're not going to have profits. And so with a bad company culture, you have high employee turnover, and employee turnover costs your company tremendous. It has been said that employee turnover can cost up to 10% of your wages just simply because you're trying to train in new employees and bring them on board. So I asked the question today, what is the culture of your company? Would you fear for me to call one of your employees and say, what is the culture of this company? Would that bring any kind of tremors to your heart? Or you say, sure, go ahead. I know what they would say. Is that the kind of pulse that you have on your company? So do you know the culture of your company? And has it been defined? Because as a culture, we have values within our company. That is largely what determines the culture within our company. And so even as individuals, as families, as communities, we're guided by values that we have in our lives. And so it should be the same within our company as well. So I mentioned this morning about timeliness. So one of my, and I know many of you came from a long distance this morning, so we're not going to be too hard on you. But one of my opinions about life is that, or one of my guidelines for life is that if you're on time, you're late. Okay? So if you say, the event's supposed to start at 8, so I show up at 8. Are you on time? Yes, you're there on time before the event started, but maybe it would be better if you showed up 5 minutes before. So think about that in your company. If your employees are constantly showing up at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock when they're supposed to be starting work, and they want to have this little chit-chat around the coffee pot, or they want to have this little, they're supposed to be starting work at 6, and then it's 6:15 till they get started. So that is all part of culture. So are you willing are you going to tolerate that, or are you going to say, hey, one of our values is timeliness? All right, so as I've said, culture is defined by values. Have you as a company defined what those values are within your company? Do you know? If you don't, you should be thinking about, what can we do to improve that? So as we think about values, we're not going to take a lot of time to talk about that, but values are either written or unwritten. So think about when you were growing up. Your family probably had some things that they were important to your family, and they were, and as your parents, they were just things that you did, and you never really thought about it until years later you went back and you reflect over those times, say, you know what, those were some values that my parents were wanting to instill or they were wanting to put within me, and so therefore we did them. But they were never written. No one had ever said, here it's written. So values can be written or unwritten. But I believe that in a business, if we want to have a good company culture, then values need to be written and they need to be posted where everyone knows here is the values that we have. And so when we talk about values, you can have a list this long, you can have whatever that list might be, but keep your values simple, easy to be understood, and easily enforceable. So if you have a list of 50 of them, you're going to have a difficult time enforcing that. But if you have a list of 3 to 7, it's going to become much, much easier for you to enforce that. So all values then give you a premise to work around where you can hire, you can fire, you can review, and you can reward when you're guided by those values that you have within your company. So I would give that as a challenge for you. If you want long-term employees and you want to have a sustainable workforce, make sure that they know what the culture of the company is, who you are, what you believe, and what your purpose is. It's very important that happens. All right, how can we have a healthy company culture? So I believe one of them is caring is more than a number. Now I work in a company, Gaming Accounting, there's 45 or 50, I don't know the exact number of employees that there are. But within the company, we have team leaders, and those team leaders are responsible for the group of people that they're under. And I have a team leader on the business advising division that he cares about us as individuals. And we have spent hours talking about things outside of work. It's not just work related, it's things outside of that as well. So caring is more than a number. And there are various ways that you can show that. As we think about, what does caring look like? Take the time to ask personal questions about their lives. I had an employee that absolutely loved football. Now, I do not like football. But he lived and breathed football. When October rolled around and throughout the winter, I knew those conversations were coming, and I could have cared less about football. So there was some days on lunch break, and he was a huge Tennessee Titans fan, and he loved the Vols, and he loved, this was who he was. And so I would listen. I heard stories about Peyton Manning. I heard stories about Brett Favre. I heard stories. Look, I don't care about those things, but I had to just be okay with and sit and listen to his stories for a while and find out, like, okay, it's time to get back to work again. We got more things to do than talk football. But interestingly enough, he was one of those men who was with me for 10 years. So caring is more than a number. So we need to be able to just listen and to hear out our employees. Another thing we would do is we would, on a fairly regular basis, the guys would, my general manager, he would stop at the grocery store on the way to work, and he'd pick up some steaks, and for lunch they would fire up the grill and they'd throw some steaks on there, and they had themselves some lunch on company expense. Now you have to keep it under control, but it's something that they remember. If you're here today, I don't know how many business owners are here with employees, but this is an excellent way to show that you care about your employees. Bring them to the shed show. It's a small thing. You just get in a vehicle together, you spend the day together, and you see the other side of people when we do this. Years ago, when the shed show was still hosted by Union Grove Lumber and Capital Forest Products over in Union Grove, North Carolina, it was a very, very small event, but they had some really good door prizes. And one year they had this nice 14-foot John boat, aluminum John boat, and one of my employees took that boat home that day. And that was a fun day to see him win something like that. And so take your employees to events. Another way you can do that is to take them on other outings. We enjoyed to do some, when the company was smaller, we went on several whitewater rafting trips. I took them on a guided striper bass fishing trip one time. Just an excellent way to spend the day with them. There's no, other than just showing them that you care. That is the only thing that comes back to you. So there's many ways that you can do that you can show that you care about your employees. Also remember, Ryan Leak, several months ago, we had the opportunity to be a part of the Global Leadership Summit, and Ryan Leak made this statement. He said, lead and work from the other side of you. Now stop and think about that for a bit. Have you ever asked yourself the question, what is it like to be on the other side of me? You know, sometimes we look at relationships and we say, well, if they did only this, then this could happen. Well, what if we stopped and said, what if I made this change? Stop and think about it. What is it like to work on the other side of you? To be that employee of yours? To be that husband to your wife? You know, so think about those connections there. So lead and work from the other side of you. When we start saying, well, if that person would only change his opinion, then we could get things done. But stop and put yourself in their perspective and lead and work from the other side of you. Another way that we can have a good company culture is provide them with good quality tools. Tools that are made for the job. Tools that will enable them to just do their job well. So profits are good for the year. You've had a banner year, and so you say, I'm going to buy myself a brand new truck. So away we go. We buy ourselves a brand new pickup, brand new truck, whatever it is that you go and buy, and you got a forklift in the shop that doesn't start 20 times out of 30. Now you pull up outside your shop with that brand new truck, and you have a forklift in there that just doesn't run correctly. Let me tell you, I can almost guarantee it. It won't be long till employees will be saying, you know what? We're going and finding something else. We don't need to we don't need to put up with this. You know, we can go find a place where they provide good quality tools for us. Go out and ask them. Say, hey, we've had a really good year this year, and we want to add to our equipment. What should we buy? Be vulnerable enough and go and ask them that. You say, oh, well, they're going to, take us to the bank. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised when they say, you know what? If we only had this, Joey lift down there didn't tell me to say this, but maybe they say, well, just get us a Joey lift. I have no idea if those things are valuable or not, but I just know they're down there. All right. Be constantly looking for ways to improve your processes and your efficiency. Maybe you have employees who are just frustrated because the connection between sales and office staff is absolutely horrible. Or maybe between sales staff and the shop, office staff and the shop staff, it's just there's broken connections. Take the time to stop and look at your processes and procedures and say, what can I do to improve this process? It has been said that if we improve, so there's this 1% improvement rule. So if we improve 1% every day in whatever we do, that equates to a 32% improvement per day. Okay? So when you think about that and you say, okay, if I can improve my processes 1% of every day that we work, what impact is that going to have on my business? And this is the power of exponents, and it increases over time because we're building on the 1% that we had the day before. So if you have 1% improvement every day that you're working, that would come out to about a 12% increase in a year's time. So think about that. If you can improve your processes by 1% every working day, and you build 500 buildings a year, if my math is correct, that would equal 30 buildings per year. Stop and think about that impact. It's huge. Just by improving what you do by 1%. And you say, well, how can I? Just go back and look at your processes. Say, what can I do to improve this by 1%? To become 1% more efficient, 1% more in sales, whatever that might be. And you say, well, I'm running an efficient business. Good for you. But I can almost guarantee there's room for improvement. All right, another way that we can have good company culture is just make sure that there is safety throughout the company. I've seen some situations where there's some pretty sketchy things that happen. Your employees are owed more than that. I'm not saying, I understand OSHA has some regulations that are they just don't work in a shed shop. I get that. So I'm not saying that we have to follow everything of that to the T, but we owe it to our employees to provide a safe environment. The last one is be flexible with them. They also have a life to live, and some days they just have an event, they have something that comes up that they really need to take off. You say, no, man, we got production that needs to be met, we can't let you have off. Talk through it with them and see what can be done and be flexible and enable them to have off. All right, how do we attract and then retain good employees? So as I already mentioned, it has been very, very difficult in the recent years to attract good employees. There's been people who have lots of opportunities, sign-on bonuses, pay raises elsewhere. But recently I was told of a young man who had the opportunity to make substantially more money at another company, and he chose to remain with the company that he was at because he said, the culture of this company, he said, I don't think I'll find it anywhere else. And that speaks very, very highly of his employers. But be thinking about that as you think about how do you retain. So have a clearly defined company culture. Take the time, be vulnerable, and say, what do we do as a company that is actually causes people to stay here? You say, well, I just pay them a lot of money. Well, you might pay them a lot of money, but that's not enough to keep people. Young people today are looking for relationships. They want a relationship with the company that they're working for. So have clearly defined company cultures if you want to attract and retain good employees. The second one is help them achieve their personal goals. Again, this comes back to compensation. What if you have an employee working you for 20 years and he's still paying his mortgage on his $200,000 house, and you as an employer own 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 properties? So you say, well, I'm the business owner. I'm the one taking the risk. I get that. But your employees also have personal goals that they also want to achieve. So help them. Look for ways that you can help them to achieve those personal goals, whether that's through compensation, whatever that might be, but help them achieve their personal goals. Ask them, what is personal goals that you have? Is it working for me for 20 years? Is it working for whatever that might be? Because the truth of the matter is, there are some employees, there are some men, and some people who have no interest in having their own company. They have zero interest in that. I have a brother-in-law that he had a shed company for about 3 years, worked in one for many, many years. He owned his own for about 3 years, and that was it. He would much rather work for someone than actually have his own company. So you will have people like that. And you say, well, I'm glad there's people like that because I can just pay them what I want to and they'll just always be there. No, look for ways to help them achieve their personal goals. We also need to have, if we want to retain a good employee, we have to make sure that they're satisfied with their job. So many people, when they hire someone, they say, well, I have this need. I have a need. I have a position that needs to be filled. And so I hire this person, or the company is growing. You say, well, I have this guy here. I think he'll do a good job. Let's just shove him into that and let him fill that position. But he really doesn't enjoy that position. You're going to frustrate him. You're going to frustrate yourself, and the company's going to suffer. So as you think about your company, what we many times talk about with owners is create that position first, define the position, and then go look for the person to fill it. Never box the position around the person, because likely you'll have a frustrated person. And I'll just give you my own experience. So in coming to work for Gaiman, I initially contacted the company about possibly being in bookkeeping of something of that nature. I enjoy that. But in an interview with the owner of the company, he told me, he said, John, he said, you're going to last 6 months in that and you're going to be done. But he said, we have this position that we have available. We have some opening there. He said, would you be interested? I had never thought about that I'm actually smart enough to be a business advisor. And I'm still not smart enough to be that. But it's just, when I was given that opportunity and I looked at it, I said, sure, I think this would fit me. And so he was right. If I would have done that previous position, I would have been done in 6 months' time. So make sure that your employees are satisfied in the position they are. And sometimes we have people that they're just frustrated with what they do. Help your employees also contribute to the community in meaningful work. Showing up day after day and just shed after shed after shed after shed. After a while, that's not very meaningful anymore. It just isn't. I've been there. And so look for ways that you can help your employees be involved in meaningful work where they can give back to the community. Whether that is enabling them to take a day off to go help with a disaster project, to help clean up, whether that is some other community event that is happening, enable them to go and to take part in that event. Because that will go a long, long way in helping them just to feel like they belong. And it can be on your time. It's not saying, okay, yeah, you can go do that, but it's going to be on your time. Just make it possible for them even to say, hey, here's this project. I'm giving you the day off. Go do it, and I'll pay you for your time. All right, as we look briefly at how do we attract, or as we think about compensation. So this is probably one of the biggest debates within the industry. How do we pay? How do we do a good job of paying? What's correct payment? And so on. And so that was one of the reasons for the surveys. We began talking about this. We said, there has to be somewhat of some guidance that is given here. And so we're looking to you for some feedback on this. All right. One way that you can pay your employees, of course, would be salary. And then we also have hourly pay, we have commission-based, we have performance-based, and we have profit sharing or equity. So we don't have a magic bullet saying, if you do this, it's going to work. That's not what we're saying. But what I am saying here this morning, I want you to remember as you leave this place, is whatever you pay your employee, make sure that you're paying that. The amount that you should be paying your employee is what you wish you would have paid him on the last day that they worked. So when they turn in that notice and say, we're done, you're going to have a difficult time turning that trend and getting them to reverse their decision. They've thought it through, and they're done. And you say, man, if I would only have paid him an additional $5 an hour or $10,000 a year, whatever it is. He was a valuable employee and he walked on me. Think about that and say, if I would have only had paid him earlier, he may have stayed. And I also believe that as a steward of God's possessions, it is imperative that all employees are treated well, irrespective of background. So remember that. And then we're going to look a little bit at an incentive pay plan that we offer. All right, thinking about salary base. So if you have a salary base, it's a consistent pay. You know what it's going to cost you every week, and it's that amount. We have overhead, can easily be calculated because you say, okay, I'm paying this guy X amount of dollars, therefore we need to produce X amount of sales to cover that salary. So those are some of the pros. What are some of the cons to that? One of them is it lacks performance motivation. If someone is strictly on salary, there's not a whole lot to motivate them to get a lot done. So that would be a negative to that. And then there's also a fixed cost. There's nothing you can do about it. It's going to cost you $60,000 a year for that employee. So as we look at hourly pay then, and so hourly pay might be an excellent fit for seasonal workers. It might be for part-time employees. It might be jobs that need greater attention to detail, and there are other variables that come with that. So those are some times when you would have for hourly pay. What are some of the negatives to that? Again, it can lack performance motivation. And again, there is that fixed cost thing. It's just simply, it's going to cost you, if they show up to work and they produce nothing, you're going to have to pay them. So that's one of the negatives to that as well. All right, the other one would be then commission-based, where we have commission-based. Commission-based can be, that can be a very motivational and performance-driven. So as you think about motivation and performance-driven, and commission can be a two-edged sword for salespeople. And I know many of you might pay employees that are sales, might pay them on commission. Commission can be a two-edged sword because it has the potential to be highly rewarding, but it also has, for those top performers, but it also has the other side of that, where it can become a frustration, it can become stressful, sales just aren't closing, and it just becomes a huge, huge frustration to the employee. Or you have your off season, you have your winter time, and granted, some employees just aren't very good managers of their money. And so they have this high time, so they live high, and then they go through this dip, and they're like, man, it's not reaching. So there you have some of the stresses that come with that. So it has a huge upside for income potential, and then we also have, you can easily put a performance measurement to it. You can say if you reach X amount of dollars, you will reach X amount of salary. And so it is performance measured. It also gives them some autonomy. They can kind of put their own motivation to it. It gives them that incentive saying, man, if I work hard, close these sales, it can help with them working on their own. Now on the other side of that is it could actually work against a good team effort because they're saying they're only concerned about their own pay. So you have that on the other side as well. But I believe that commission-based pay alone, it will produce results for a while, but many times it's going to lead to burnout because the focus is on that commission. And they're like, man, if I just can't make that commission, it leads to burnout. All right, as we look about, so these are just some more, so it has a fixed cost per unit sold, and then we have an income variability, meaning that, and I already mentioned the stress and pressure, and there could be that risk of unethical behavior with the employee. And I mentioned as well, it can lead to individualism rather than a team effort. All right, thinking about the next one, we're looking at performance-based. So performance-based it's motivational because it's performance-driven. You say if you reach a certain point, you're going to get paid X amount of dollars. So performance-based can be a huge motivation and in performance. It has a huge upside for the individual for income potential. Again, you can put a performance measurement to it. You can say if you reach X amount of dollars, then you will this. Or if you produce a certain amount of square footage, this will happen. And so you have this performance measurement. The measurable needs to be defined and then adhered to. Because what I've seen happen is people say, yeah, we'll pay you for this. And then but they never define what that measurable is, and it becomes frustrating to the employees. They're like, I just don't know what to expect. So make sure that if you're going to say, well, this is performance, and you're scoring them, it has to be defined, saying you get a 10, 1 to 10 for this, or whatever that might be, timeliness, or, the way you keep your bay cleaned up, or whatever. It could be lots of things, but that performance has to be measurable, defined, and adhered to. All right, this one here, profit sharing and equity. I put it here simply because it's an option. The last part of it, equity in a company, that one has some huge potential for some difficulty. But I think one of the things that we can do is profit sharing. Is have an agreement where, okay, if we're profitable to a certain point, then we share this kind of profit with the company. So if we have profit sharing or equity in a company, it will promote long-term employment. It gives a sense of ownership to the employee. There is a lot of time the employee will begin to have a long-term perspective. They say, you know what? If we don't care about waste, if we don't care about loss of material, it's going to affect your profitability. But if they know that my bonus is directly affected by the profitability of this company, they will be concerned about waste. They will be concerned about efficiencies. They will be concerned about just production in general or sales in general, whatever that might be. And it gives a more of a long-term perspective. They're saying, it's not just I get a bonus this week, but if we reach these goals for the year, then this is going to happen. So it gives more of a long-term perspective. Many times it also creates more of a team collaboration. There's not this individualism saying, this is all about me. No, rather, if this is profit sharing, saying the company is profitable, it's going to affect everybody. And so we all work together saying, you know what can we do to make this department more profitable, or this department more profitable, or this department? I think when there's profit sharing, it builds transparency and trust. Now, I get this with a company. There is not that, as a business owner, you don't spill all the beans, and you don't have all of your employees knowing all the details of your company. But I do believe when there's certain metrics that are given, certain metrics that are shared, it builds this transparency and trust within the company as well. And I believe it also just fosters within your employees just this motivation of being kind of like a business owner as well. All right, so the next two slides here, and I said about a profit share or an incentive pay plan that Gaiman has developed, and we use it at the office. And so this is just a snapshot of part of it, and I'm not going to take a lot of time to walk through it, but I will just briefly explain it, and then you're free to come to our office or to our booth down here and talk to us about it. So on the far left over there, we have the GP dollars. So that is gross profit dollars. That is sales. Take that times your gross profit margin, and there you have your gross profit dollars. The next column is labor plus overhead, and so that's the direct labor of the company plus your overhead. You subtract the two, and you have a net profit of $15,843. The next three columns is just year-to-date numbers, so just disregard that. So when we come over here to the L column, where it's labor, that was the actual labor that was paid out. So that would have been the labor that was paid out there. But then the bonus column there, that 1584, this is adjustable by you as a business owner. So currently this is set at 10%. So 10% of net profits goes into the bonus pool. And then at the end of the year, you pay out of the bonus. So the year-to-date bonus there is 1584. And then you pay that bonus out based upon working wages that they would have worked. And so the neat thing with this is, so here you can give this graph to your employees on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, and you can say, okay, on the top there, this month, 10% of profits went into the bonus pool. And so currently, year-to-date, there's that 14.29% there on the bottom. When your employees look at that bonus year-to-date, they know that at the end of the year, if they worked if they made $50,000, they're going to get a bonus of 14% at the end of the year. It's just a very straightforward way for them. They know nothing about the profitability of the company. They know nothing of what percentages are there. They know none of that. All they know is that at the end of the year, if things continue at this trend, it could fall off to the end of the year, but they can look at that bottom number and they can say, you know what, at the end of the year, this should be my bonus at the end of that year. So that is one way to just put it in front of them to motivate them. All right. The next slide now is on the results. All right, so of everyone that is attending here, we had 38 responses. The overall average within this group is a 7.6. We have 2% of the respondents who said my culture is at 4. We had 2% that said it's at 5. We have 6 that said it's at 5%. We had 34% that said it's at a 7. We have 34% that said it's at an 8. We have 13% that said it's at a 9, and 7% that said it's at a 10. So good job to those who said we're at a 10. All right, so that is the one result. I've never done this before, so let me make sure this works. No, not that one. All right, let's see here. Here we go. No? Okay, technology and I. Oh, here we go. No, quit it. It's supposed to be there. All right. Just made a fool of me. No? Thought I could click down here. But it just goes on. All right, I'll have to figure that one out. Okay, we'll come back to that. Because there's 7 more pages that are there. It worked fine before, so. Okay. So I will get those results together, and we will either email them to you or you can buy our booth for that. All right. So thank you for your contribution to that. And we will at this time, is there anyone who we have just a few minutes. Actually, we're pretty much out of time. So is there anyone who has a quick question? Okay, in the back there.
Yeah, I don't know if it's possible, but it would be pretty neat to know how many of the people that responded with the 10, how many of those people were employees and how many were business owners.
Okay, that would be a good metric. So he's saying it would be good to know how many of those were employees and how many were business owners. I hadn't thought about that, so that would be an excellent metric there. So the plan is, so watch for the next Shed Builder magazine, and we are actually going to post those results there. So be on the lookout for that. It was supposed to work, and we had never done this before, so Microsoft let me down here. All right, any other
point
questions?
on that, the results. So if you didn't take it, and if you would be so kind as to fill it out and hand it to Tim and Llewellyn as you leave, in the December issue of Shed Builder, those numbers will be presented there. So we're going to capture everybody's results there at that time.
All right, so in closing here, again, ask yourself the question, why would someone want to work for your company? Be honest about it. Go home and think about this. Why would someone want to work for your company? And then next, create a workplace where good employees thrive and they want to work. It's in your hands. It's in no one else's hands. It's in your hands. So make sure that you think about that and create that place. So I will put our information there. Feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to talk further with you. So thank you for your attendance. And the next session, if you have signed up for the next one by Ken, he is on having profitability. If you signed up for that, if you'd be so kind as to exit the room and then re-enter, because they're trying to just control who had signed up, because obviously people didn't show up here this morning because it was a filled up event. So there may be people who are wanting to come into this next event and will need a seat. So thank you for attending and enjoy the show.